Hello and welcome to Science Never Stops. I'm your host Joseph Vick with the U.S. Space and Rocket Center, and today our topic is moon phases. Now, I have our moon in front of me, but for the purpose of this moon phase activity, I'm going to start it off with a new moon. Now, a new moon is where you don't see any of the moon in the sky. You see it to where this is the dark phase where there is no reflection from the sun. So, we're going to start with our phases. A phase is when you have the orbit of the moon going around the Earth, and then the moon acts as a reflective surface for the sun, causing us on Earth to see various phases, or reflections of light off the moon as it orbits the Earth. So we go from our dark new moon phase, and when you start to build a reflection on the moon, you call it waxing and building. So you have a waxing crescent moon form until you eventually reach a half moon or a first quarter. And then you have a continuing waxing gibbous moon until fully illuminated full moon. Now, the full moon is not where it ends. You just do what you did to build a full moon backwards. So you have the darkening, where you have the waning, which waning means the light's going to disappear. Waning gibbous, on to the third quarter, waning crescent, to eventually you reach again the beginning point of the new moon, where this takes about 29 days, or roughly about a month. But if you're lucky, you get 2 full moons in 1 month, and you call that second one a blue moon. Another way to show this concept of phases with the moon is to take a ball. I have a white styrofoam ball on a little skewer here, and a flashlight. And what you can do, you can hold it, you don't have to have a flashlight, you can hold it up to a light in your room. And when you shine the light on the ball, you'll notice that as you orbit around, notice here from my vantage point, that would be a full moon. So I would see an illuminated object, but on your side it would be the dark side of the moon, orbiting around. And as you orbit around, you'll see a crescent or half moon, depending on where you are. So the light on that side, this would be a new moon for me. But as you have the moon orbiting, and the moon is also on an axis. So notice I have a tilt at an angle, this moon. So it orbits on an axis just like the Earth does. And that axis helps it to, again, show some light and reflecting of light. And from this video, you can see this white ball is very reflective, so it was very difficult to see that sort of shadowing as I was orbiting about, which is good because the moon is what's considered a natural satellite, not like a beep boop satellite that transmits your TV signal down to Earth, but a natural satellite being that is an object that orbits another object or planet. And we call that a natural satellite. An artificial satellite would be the beep boop technological thing that we send up, man sends up, for exploration of space. But the moon is a gorgeous piece, our closest celestial neighbor in our solar system, and it goes through phases. So let's go more in depth with these phases so that we can understand them and see them clearly, but do them with cookies. So, cookie lunar phases, let's get started. Now there are 2 major vocabulary words I wanted to go over for understanding the building of the phases, or the subtracting of the phases with our lunar phase building with our cookie. So I have here traced a circle which represents the outline of the moon, and the first word is called waxing. So I have lit a candle here. Now, candles are dipped in wax, and the more they wax the candle, it builds a bigger candle. So waxing is when you have the buildup of a phase. Going from one light phase to another light phase, the moon is getting bigger and bigger and leading to a full moon. Just like when I take this candle as it is burning and I tip it over, and notice the wax is filling the surface of the moon. So that is waxing. It's building and building and building the layers, the light layers of the moon. Set that to the side. And as you can see, as it's drying, you have a buildup of the moon. So waxing is an increase of light on the surface, going from one phase, getting bigger and bigger and fuller till you reach the full moon. Now the waning section of the moon is when you have a subtraction of what was built. So you start with the full moon, fully illuminated, and then you start eliminating or subtracting. So let me take, if I were to take this cosmic knife and sort of slide off all that wax, there we go, and you have the removal of what was already illuminated. That is waning. So that is a subtraction of the light, meaning that it goes from a full moon getting darker and darker and darker until it reaches its dark phase, the new moon. So that is waxing and waning. Now to get started with our cookie lunar phases, the first thing you'll need to do is gather your logbook or a piece of cardstock or regular paper and 4 cookies. So it doesn't have to be the dark and light cookies here, but the more filling that you have, the easier it is to do the activity with. So these are mega stuffed. So these happen to be my favorite. Mega stuffed, more cream in the middle, the better. So it makes them a little bit easier to cut the phases out with the knife. So we are using a knife. This is a sharper knife, but you can use a skewer if you want, a toothpick, or you can even use your own mouth and tongue if you want to bite off all the different phases. So we have this to start, and take your cookie, one of your cookies, and place and trace 8 circles on a sheet of paper. And these 8 circles, when you're finished, it should look something like a Lego brick when you're done. This will allow us to showcase each one of the major steps in a lunar phase. There are more than this, but these are the main milestones for going from new moon to full moon, back to new moon. So there is that. So the first thing we'll need to do is we'll need to make our new and full moon. So that's with our first cookie. So what you'll do is gently separate your cookie, and it will separate easily. Notice you have a dark phase here. This dark phase with no reflection of light, I'll turn around so it's even darker, would represent our new moon, our beginning, our start to our lunar cycle. Which means on our sheet, this one goes first, just like that. So set that down on your page. And we then have this fully illuminated piece, which would represent our full moon. So likewise, set that one down to the side on your sheet. Now those are the dark new moon phase and the full moon phase, but there are things in between. So let's go to our next part. So let's separate our next cookie very gently, just like that. Set down the dark piece there, we'll be using that. Take your object, again if it's a sharp knife, make sure you use your parents' help. Have your parents assist you. And what you'll be doing is on this side, do a very small sliver crescent. Cut a little bit of that crescent off so it looks sort of like a really thin smiley face, just like that, and you're left with this larger piece. This larger piece would represent our gibbous moon. So we would have our gibbous moon there, a larger section. But we have our crescent. So we're going to set the crescent on the upper part of the cookie. This is messy, which is good, because the messier the activity, the more fun the activity. So we have a crescent moon on that side. Set that one to the side, so we have a gibbous, we have a full, and a new moon. Next, take another cookie, very gently, divide, take, and we're going to do our quarter moons. And even though in mathematics we have a quarter, which is representative of a fourth, it can be a little confusing. This is actually a half of the illuminated moon. So again, separate half. You have your other half, put that on the top of your dark cookie. So you have your quarter moons. And one more separation. So take your dark piece, set it down, and we're going to do another crescent like we did before. To represent another waxing and waning gibbous and crescent moon. There's our crescent, there's our gibbous, and now we have our 8 cookies, and we're going to need to line them up in order of their beginnings. So I'm going to adjust the camera and then we'll see from an aerial view. So now it's time to place our 8 major moon phases on our chart that we did earlier. So first we'll start with our new moon, the dark phase, where we see no reflection of light from the lunar surface. And then we have the building phases, which is the waxing phases. So we have our first waxing crescent, where we see that very thin sliver of light. Then we move to our first quarter moon, where we see half of the moon illuminated in the night sky. Moving from there, we have our waxing gibbous moon, where it almost looks full, but not quite. Then we have our fully illuminated moon, fully illuminating the night sky. And then we have the subtraction from the full moon, meaning our waning gibbous moon. And then our further subtraction with our last quarter moon. And then finally our waning crescent moon, until it then starts over the cycle within the next month with our new moon again. Notice as we go through, we have our new moon, waxing crescent, first quarter, waxing gibbous, full moon, waning gibbous moon, last quarter, and waxing crescent. Notice they're oriented on the page where they look like they are opposites of one another, complementary opposites of one another as you go across. So a waxing phase is the opposite of the waning phase. So that is our major 8 moon phases that you can see in the sky. I encourage you to do this activity as well, and the best part is afterward you get to eat the lunar phases. So enjoy doing the activity, and remember, science is fun and science never stops.